Thank you for having me here for this conversation, for creating this space, holding this space, for facilitating this. So thank you for that. I'm Sahana Chattopadhyay. I've joined this call from Mumbai, India. We are just coming out, hopefully, coming out of a very, very severe second wave of COVID. It wasn't so much a wave, it was literally like a wall, a tsunami hitting India. There was devastation, deaths, destruction, all kinds of stuff. Lack of medicine, people dying, mismanagement, everything that could go wrong went wrong. But something went very, very right. And I'm going to start from there for a reason. Amidst this absolute devastation and destruction, literally, like it was like, I don't know, it was unimaginable. I saw people rising to come together from all across India. People, just normal people like you and me, rising to connect with complete strangers, helping complete strangers to find a hospital bed, to find that one cylinder of oxygen, to find ventilators, to find medicines, even cooking and dropping food to absolute strangers' homes who could not cook for themselves. I mean, it was absolutely mind blowing to watch how people who were struggling with their own illnesses, the illnesses of their families, were coming together to help each other in the face of this utter destruction and literally a missing government, a missing leaders. It was people just just rising, literally, and that was so very heartening, heartwarming to know and see that no matter how divisive the politics become, how desperately the politicians try to divide and rule, people do not get divided that easily. So, yeah, so what has brought me to this point? I spent about 18 plus years working in the corporate world, the large MNCs and global corporates traveling the world. I'm a certified organization development change professional and a coach and a facilitator and also an instructional designer. So, a large part of my career I spent in developing capacities in organizations and working at the intersection of people's capabilities, technology, uh, business outcomes. That was the old world. And what makes people learn. So, my passion has always been what drives adults to learn. And one thing is for sure, it is not top down force, it is something that comes from within. So I've always explored that space of collaborative learning, co-creative learning, community-based peer-to-peer learning. And eventually that took me on a journey of social learning, of becoming a community manager, of becoming a coach, of becoming a facilitator, of becoming a workplace learning designer. But it also eventually moved me out entirely of the corporate world altogether. Because for one thing, I realized that the corporate world, the way they operate today, is operating in a very quote unquote toxic manner. The entire hierarchy, command and control, the mostly patriarchal norms that still exist under the radar of so-called diversity and inclusion and whatever, they are just checkboxes, and the corporates are still operating in the old time frame of controlling an essentially unpredictable, uncertain world, of trying to impose their will on a planet that is a living being of which we are a part. So, this extremely mechanical view of organizations and this command and control view of leadership, which is signified by power and aggression and assertiveness, so called winner takes all, and competitiveness wasn't my world. And the more I tried to stay aligned with myself, the less aligned I could be with that work world. I mean, it has given me a lot, taught me a lot. I've traveled the globe, but it wasn't what I could, it wasn't me. I couldn't take that. So 4 years back, 4.5 years back, I left that corporate world to start out on my own without knowing a thing about where I was going. So I literally left without a plan, except that I knew that I just need to follow my intuition. So I've always blogged and written, but over the last 4 years, it has shifted. And I've started writing, I've realized I've started writing very differently and thinking very, very differently. And I guess we are all, people like us are all becoming part of the emergent future, if you will, or possible futures, or regenerative future, whichever way or whatever we call it. But definitely trying to move towards a world that is different from the past, that is not based on this dominator values of control and power and oppression and extraction, exploitation. I know it's a big ask, it's idealistic, but I'd rather be idealistic than a realist in a world that's not working. And so that's when I stepped out. I've been writing and I've been exploring and I've been talking about these things, about leadership, about facilitation, about new kinds of organizations as living systems, about organizations that believe in, that really believe in the potential of each and every one of us and can bring us together as communities to work towards something that is meaningful for the planet, not only for a handful of humans sitting on top of the pyramid.
You mentioned, well, a lot of things there that I would like to pick up on, but yeah, you also mentioned at the beginning how you felt in India, right? The people rising and coming together, and now talking about these emergent futures, these different ideas that are coming up. I feel that happening. I see that happening, right? And at the same time, I see business as usual and the corporations pushing back harder. And I don't know if that's harder than ever before or just how I am more aware of it now. But yeah, that's not really a question. But do you still want to say something to that?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm seeing it. I'm really seeing it here, and I'm sure it's happening across the globe. And so this whole quote unquote post-pandemic world. I mean, we are not yet in the post-pandemic world. I don't even know if we'll ever really be really in the post-pandemic world. But for the lack of a better phrase, I'm using that. It's almost like organizations, I'm not saying all, but at least 95% plus, are latching on to what will benefit them. And this whole work from home, which should have been a flexible choice. Yes, of course, the pandemic forced it, and that was a different situation. But organizations are almost latching onto it like, oh, now we don't need to have infrastructure. Now we don't need to have, pay for all of this. Employees can work from their home, from so-called comfort of their home, and they can be available 12 hours a day, if not more, because they're at home. And I'm seeing that happen, at least here. I don't know if it's happening in all the countries. But what I'm also noticing along with that is it's almost like there is this lack of consideration of does everyone have that space, mental, emotional, physical, to work from home? Does everyone have a conducive enough environment to work from home? Can they work for, I mean, should they be working for 12 hours a day or more just because they are at home? And what does leadership mean in this context where you can't see your employees, but can you trust them? Can you stop trying to sort of sort of spy on them or keep them under a tight leash because you don't trust they will put in their 100%? And what is that shifting ethos when you say a flexible, diverse, distributed workplace where workers are working from the comfort of their home? That's the assumption. Then what kind of leadership should be in place to hold this flexible, agile group of people together without becoming overbearing, without becoming constantly in a surveillance mode of, or without, at least what I see happening here is this almost intrusion into private time. So the time between private, personal, and work has completely melted away. Those boundaries have melted away, and I don't know if that's psychologically healthy, emotionally healthy, because now I see people totally stressed out because they have to balance so many things along with work pressure, which should have been reduced for because everyone is dealing with so much in the face of this pandemic, but which hasn't happened. It's almost like it's becoming another gateway to how much more profit can be made by downsizing, by doing away with infrastructure, by making one person do the work of three. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm questioning all of that.
Yeah, and it seems definitely a lot of companies have thought, "Oh, we can save money by not having our physical offices." And actually, why don't we just outsource things to
Yeah,
countries where we don't have to pay as high salaries, seeing as
yeah,
we don't have to have them physically here?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned that idea of, yeah, trying to exert more and more control, right, over something that is uncertain and chaotic. And yeah, I feel that's maybe what's got us into this mess in the first place, right? Humans trying to exert this ultimate control over the natural world. So when you think about the different emerging ways of being in the world and different possible futures, how do you feel that might look like as opposed to this very dominant, controlling way of doing business?
Okay, so to, if I have to give vent to my full idealistic self and really sort of give voice to the future, which I really believe wants to emerge through us. And I'm seeing it in all the movements happening in the last decade across the globe, from Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, to Extinction Rebellion, to Fridays for the Future, farmers' protests. They are all movements of the grassroots, of people rising against something that is oppressing them. So, definitely a world that is much more collaborative, co creative, participatory, which is not led by a dominator culture, but a participatory culture where just because you happen to have, I don't know, different skin color or a different gender or not of the right caste, which is the case in India, or the social class, you are relegated to the margins, the unheard, unseen, delegitimized voices, the delegitimized narratives, which have all been pushed to the margins, and sort of, the mainstream narrative has become a uniform, hegemonic narrative of progress, development, tech driven utopia, technology as panacea, which is obviously has failed stupendously to a degree that is unbelievable. That after decades of so called technology and landing a man on the moon and AI and robotics and whatnot and space and self driven cars, we are at a point where our social systems don't work. There is absolute failure of leadership across the board, across countries, barring one or two. There is simultaneous systems failure, economy, ecology, healthcare, education, everything has collapsed together. So something is really, really, really wrong. And to correct all of that, we really need to reimagine a narrative that's different, that is coming out rooted on values that are different. So far, I think the values have always been about controlling the planet, using the planet as a resources, people as resources, global south as resources, quote unquote. But now I think the time has come where we really need to reimagine a participatory future where all voices are heard, worldviews are respected, limits, accept our own limits. We are just part of the web of life. We don't rule it, we can't rule it, we can't control it. And most importantly, we live on a living planet. So if we don't abide by the ethics of a life sustaining society, the planet is going to lash back at us, which is happening now.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we're seeing now. And like we talked about at the beginning, right? It's 48 degrees Celsius in Canada right now. And
Unimaginable.
yeah, yeah. And people are still saying, oh, it's a coincidence, it's just a freak event, or some tech fix will swoop down from the heavens and save us all. And yeah, I think here where I am in Europe, it's still quite easy for people to use very heavy cognitive dissonance to act as if everything is okay. Because, in your day to day life, when you walk around, everything still looks kind of okay and normal, and you don't see a lot of crisis and suffering at your door. And yet, I wonder if I could teleport these people over to different parts of the world for a few days, what they might think if they saw what was happening in other places. So for you right now, are you in Mumbai, you said? So how does it feel to be there right now? What do you see around you?
It's still in lockdown. Shops are still closed. I mean, we just have the basic amenities. Millions of people have lost their jobs because factories and companies have shut down or downsized. Even the most so called white collar jobs are unavailable. So I see youngsters, people in their mid 20s or late 20s, struggling where once they would have had like choice of jobs. Now they're struggling to get a job. They're struggling to sort of, they are on the verge of starting out their life. They're struggling. The people who are unable to pay their mortgages are having their homes or their cars or whatever sold. They are not being able to pay the school fees for their children. And these are not, at least once, they were not poor people. They were normal, middle class, even upper middle class people. So I'm literally seeing the you can literally feel the collapse of what was so called the normal life. Except that I think we had normalized the abnormal for a very long time. And finally, the facade just, sort of blew apart. And yeah, so it's kind of the mess has hit the roof. The shit has hit the fan.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess it's normal that resistance to seeing that will increase, right? Because a lot of people who are, manifesting in the form of corporations or CEOs, they don't want that to be true so badly, so they keep pushing back. And yeah, and sort of what I'm seeing now is all of this collapse narrative, but also this narrative of this fear that there are things like the World Economic Forum that are trying to gain more control right now and to take away more and more of our freedom.
Yeah. I mean, number of billionaires have risen in the midst of pandemic. I mean, it's unbelievable. But so they are going to really clamp down hard on keeping the status quo as it is till I don't know what. I don't know how much far further things can fall apart, but evidently for them it's still going good.
Exactly. You become a billionaire in a burning world. I mean, great job.
But I think what has happened, and I think the positive side of it is the pandemic has been a portal. So for many, the veil has gone. I mean, they are no longer going to be deluded into believing things are going to work or working as they were before. So business as usual is not going to happen. And many more know it now. So I think the emergence of the movements that we are seeing across the globe kind of holds seeds for a very different future. And that's where the new future, the new stories will come from the grassroots, from the people, from the from from the day-to-day lives of people, from the indigenous people, from the margins, the so-called margins. And the center that currently the center is gradually going to dissolve. It's fallen apart already. It's propped up, but the props are now also collapsing. So the narratives, the outlier narratives, are now going to gradually become the seeds of a very different future. And my hope and my belief is it's going to happen sooner than we think. All fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. I hope so too. Well, so can you tell me a bit more about what you are doing at the moment towards this? So are you actually, because you said with coaching and with, well, your LinkedIn profile says alchemist and consultant at the Future of Work Collective, for example. So I'm not sure what are all of the beautiful things you're doing, but yeah, can you tell me a bit about some of the people you've been working with?
Sure. So, uh, one's, of course, Sam and Possible Futures, that little community of us. I'm not as active as Sam and the rest in it, but yeah, I'm there and I participate in the work, in the conversations, in the dialogues about, well, possible futures. That's uh, my most important work, I guess. My the gift that I have and that I offer in service to this future is my writing. So I write a lot about different kinds of leadership, different kinds of organizations, regenerative narratives for the future. So those have been my. So if you visit my online magazine on, it's called an emergent future. So it's on Medium. So if you go there, you'll see my latest writings on some of these topics that we've been talking about. I've also been facilitating workshops with a little group of people in New Zealand. I don't know if you've heard of Inspiral, but Inspiral is again one of those organizations that operate on the teal paradigms of reinventing organizations' teal paradigms. So we work together to facilitate dialogues on these topics: regenerative future, on holding space for new kinds of leadership, what are the requirements of a leader if they have to lead in uncertain times. So that is also some of the coaching work that I've been doing for leaders: leading in uncertainty, leading in the face of chaos, leadership qualities, and leadership itself as a quest, as a journey of becoming a steward and a facilitator, not a controller. So those have been some of the core areas around coaching and facilitation and dialogue spaces and writing primarily that I've been doing in the last. And I keep, every time I dive deeper, I feel like I'm going around in spirals, which is deepening and widening at the same time. So yeah.
Mm. And yeah, coaching for an uncertain future. I imagine that's always the case, like in a way, right, with coaching, but also going in there and telling these people who are very subscribed to business as usual and infinite growth, yeah, talking to them about what's really happening. Do people come to you because they've started to wake up to that, or do you kind of bring that conversation in wherever you go?
You know, especially in the last 2 years, I'm seeing a lot of the former happening, which is that people are waking up to the fact that the way we've been working and leading is not going to work. So even while there is hesitancy and resistance within, there is also this acceptance that I have to shift. Where I see the lack of acceptance is from leaders who are so invested um, in their own selves that they're unable to see that it's not working. So there are these two kinds of people. There are leaders who genuinely wish to make a difference and are struggling in the face of this kind of collapse of brought about by the pandemic, by the ecological crisis, and they're really struggling. They wish to make a difference. And then there is another set of people who would rather ignore all of this as long as they can because it's not directly harming them right now.
Yeah.
So I usually focus on the other group who wish to make a difference. The rest I
Yeah,
don't bother with.
there's
I,
no
I
point.
don't have that kind of energy to try and convert.
Yeah, I hear that. It's a big conversation happening now in the Climate Coaching Alliance, which was birthed last year, and I've been joining some of those conversations. The idea of, when do you bring climate change into the conversation? And a lot of coaches have huge resistance to that because they think, oh, that's not the client's agenda. But then, it's also a very privileged position to be in, right? To think, oh, we can afford to just pretend this isn't happening and just talk about making more money. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think as a coach and a facilitator, if I have to be true to my work and my own integrity, then I have to bring these up. It's not about, it's not always about, what's comfortable for the client. It's also about making the client uncomfortable with the need, if that's the need. And then letting them choose whether they want to go back to being comfortable or are they willing to take that journey of discomfort and and move along that path. That's difficult, but that's necessary.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
if I ignore that I'm not doing so, then I'm not in integrity with my work. If I ignore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're not really helping them, right? Because you're just agreeing with them, and
Yeah,
that's
that's not the point.
yeah, great. So, is there anything else that you're getting involved with at the moment that you're excited about, or what's coming up?
I'm trying to write my book, which is proving to be more difficult than I thought. Why I thought it would be easy, I have no idea. Because writing 2,000 word articles is very different from writing a book. But so I am excited about it. Uh, and why I actually asked myself, why am I writing? And there are a gazillion books out there. Is one more needed, really? But what made me decide to write is the fact that all that I'm saying are sort of spread across different topics. And what I wanted to do is bring these pieces together, knowing that the land beneath is constantly shifting, acknowledging that that shift is going to keep happening, and this is just going to be one tiny part of a narrative that's being woven, a new narrative. But I sort of wanted to contribute to the weaving of that narrative with my pieces, and having them scattered in articles may not be convenient for everyone. So yeah, I'm trying to bring that together in some form of coherence that's in alignment with the new civilizational narratives that we're talking about, new future. Hopefully.
Yeah, good luck. No, it's not easy to write a book, I think. But
it's not.
Especially, at the moment when this stuff is sometimes hard to pin down and hard to define.
And sometimes it's emotionally disturbing because I'm so caught up in it. Then stepping back and being able to write about it without, ranting about it.
Yeah.
Because it can often become a rant.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
well, it's what I find as well with writing articles, that it's very easy to start having a rant, but maybe not conducive for what we're really trying to do all of the time.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with me today. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I think nothing specific. It's just that, again, thanking you for holding these dialogues, for creating this ripple effect of these energies that we send out, and hoping that many, 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 many more people will start shifting towards, towards really believing and knowing that we are part of this interconnected planet, and we are not some supreme beings just because we happen to be humans, but just another living entity on this planet. And we are stewards of this planet, nothing more.
Yeah.
So if we can all remember that.
Thank you.
Thank you.